must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Viewers, those listening to this tape or this video, I want to bring to your attention that the politics of proxy wars in Africa is becoming real, and it has become a reality. I want to bring to the attention of the African states that time and time again we have fallen victims of proxy wars. We fight wars that are not ours. We fall in conflicts that are not supposed to be, don't help Africa, and they don't help our countries at all. The proxy war that is in East and Central and the Horn of Africa has been ignited, supported, equipped by France. It has been very real that the French government, quietly through its company called Total Oil, has been searching for resources around the triangle of East and Central Africa and Great Lakes region and the Horn of Africa. The LAPSET was one of them, which could have been a landmark project for the people of France. They withdrew from it. The Tanga to Mwanza, they made it, they withdrew from it. The search for oil and resources through Total Oil has brought us the dangers of a proxy war in the region. It is therefore very prudent for people of the region to understand the dynamics that we are going through. For example, in Rwanda and the Burundi conflict, there is a proxy war. We are fighting a proxy country. It has brought us to a war between the two countries, between Uganda and Rwanda and Burundi. There is a proxy war in Congo who is sponsoring a resurgence of rebels that are fighting President Tshisekedi because he was not supported by countries that we know very well. This type of strategy has happened in North Africa, where Libya has been reduced to rebels, where each faction, even the government supported by United Nations, is being bombarded by a rebel called Khalifa Haftar, who is funded by countries that we know. The question of Somalia and the Kenyan maritime presents a challenge, a test case for Africa and East Africa to stand firm and denounce the actions of countries that bring proxy wars and proxy politics in our region. It is therefore my humble submission that for this conflict, for this to end, we must do enough publicity, advocacy around the area to tell and explain to the international community why this problem is going to create an imbalance in the peace in the region, and the regional peace will be affected. It is therefore my humble submission that as a Ugandan whose troops, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers of other many millions Ugandans who are in Somalia, condemn any action by the Somali government to try to resolve issues that should have been resolved amicably as Africans within the African confines. I submit, therefore, that some of us will go a mile further to do now, from now onwards, to expose, to show the challenges of these countries that make us fight a proxy war in Africa. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you.
Way back in 1998, the late Secretary General of the United Nations by name Kofi Annan thought of an idea, brought an idea of saying the only way to bring world order where crimes committed that are not punishable in local courts, local countries, regional courts could be taken to an international crimes court. The Rome Statute and Rome Treaty of 1998 July was an offspring of already cooked DSGE intelligence system mechanism to keep Africa under check. Up to date, the French government pays 70% of the salaries of the International Criminal Court, from the porter to the judge, to the prosecutor, and the rest of the other people. This was a project of Kofi Annan and the Kofi Annan Foundation, followed by George Soros as an accomplice of Kofi Annan, brought in by Luis Moreno Campo and the entire system of the West, some countries in the West, to keep check on African countries that did not agree with the policies of the French and to their policies of Western culture. The International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Luis Moreno Campo agreed in all this that yes, he has been picking money, extra monies, and we followed the story together with my group in France, powerful investigators in France who worked together with me, and we found out that, truly speaking, Luis Moreno Campo, Fernandez Gumedi, the former judge, the president of the International Criminal Court, laundered the money, some coming from American banks themselves. This evidence was put in the ICC. In the case of Bashir versus the chief prosecutor, I filed an application, which I still have, and which I'm going to publicize again, so that people can know that I was right. I've been vindicated because the American friends now have found that my credibility is real, that I was right when I stood up to say this court is corrupt. This court launders money, $17 million of United States money, laundered through Bahamas, through New York banks, back to Ocampo's personal assistant, by then called Fernandez Gumedi Silvia, who later on rose to the ranks of becoming the president of International Criminal Court. It has taken us time, energy, effort, resources to investigate the corruption scandal that have rocked the International Criminal Court. Why should African countries continue to be in the ICC, yet even the superpowers like America saying no, we have enough courts to try our own people? Viewers, it has taken Americans over 20 years to listen to our voices when we told Rainburger in Nairobi that this court is a corrupt court.
Today, on the eve of September the 11th, I want to deliver a clear and unambiguous message on behalf of the President of the United States. The United States will use any means necessary to protect our citizens and those of our allies from unjust prosecution by this illegitimate court. We will not cooperate with the ICC. We will provide no assistance to the ICC, and we certainly will not join the ICC. We will let the ICC die on its own. After all, for all intents and purposes, the ICC is already dead to us.
A case of the Kenyan people. These cases in Kenya, the chief prosecutor called Fatou Bensouda put serious statements at the end of the cases, discharge and termination. In legal language, these cases pose a very serious threat in the future. What the people of Kenya can do, and they should do, is today to wrap up the work envelope. Because until this envelope is sealed, thrown in Indian Ocean, the chief prosecutor in the future will come and look for that envelope, use it to incriminate people again. It brings me back to the situation. America is sealing its journey out of the ICC. Why do you wait? Why don't you take this opportunity to seal your journeys out of the ICC? America is quitting, warning that it cannot no longer be a party to such an obnoxious court, a court that has no powers, that talks from this side and vomits from the other side, a court that cuts and pastes evidence, a court that buys witnesses, a court that incites incentives, gives incentives to witnesses of a passport and a relocation, then you tell lies about people. A court that sentences you as per the words there. Why should you leave a country that has a jury that checks on what the judges would do, the excesses of judges, and go to a country, a court that has no jury? Time has come for Africa to think. Do we need this court? Does Africa need this court?
Hello and a very good morning to you, wherever you're watching us this day. It is the 9th of October 2019. The show is Good Morning Africa, and of course the television station is Punchline Africa TV, where we are dedicated in covering and bringing you the latest from the continent. Thank you so much, wherever you're watching us. It could be an afternoon, an evening, depending with where you are watching us today, but all the same, welcome you to the show today. I'll start, and Dr. Matanga might join me or not. I'm not sure, but if he's able to, then fine and good, and if not, then we will continue as we did yesterday and the other days. So We have so much in store. Still, the drama in Uganda unravels between pop star and now turned member of parliament, Mr. Bobby Wine, or Robert Changulanyi, his official name there. He was supposed to be attending a concert, and he was blocked. Even I think right now, police has barricaded his home and the place where he was supposed to be having his event. Remember, today is Uganda is celebrating its Independence Day, and Bobby Wine thought it would be very wise for him to have a concert on the same day. I think this guy is just looking for trouble, or he knows what he's doing, baiting the government. But we will talk about that a bit later. And also some new development from Malawi. Remember the elections that happened in May that resulted into chaos. Appears that it has not stopped because the opposition still maintains that President Peter Mutharika did not win the elections fair and square. And so I think he wanted to go visit a part of the country and have a rally, and it's opposition stronghold. So he was met there with protesters, and also in Nigeria, abduction, and that has become another biggest lucrative business there in Nigeria, where gunmen and even Boko Haram and other militant groups, or just criminals, period, are using this as a new source to get money. They'll kidnap people, and then you have to pay for some ransom before you can get your loved one. So we will talk about that and how this is posing even more a security threat to Nigeria, added to what they already have in the name of Boko Haram. And also in Egypt, remember some protesting that happened a couple of weeks ago that was not to the magnitude of the 2011, but a lot of people are arrested, but apparently some have been released. And then we'll go to Sudan. It has received some new money from United Arab Emirates. We'll talk about that. And Rwanda launches the first African mobile phone. We'll talk about first smartphone. We'll talk about that also. And as well as Rwanda still in the country, another preacher. I think I had that news yesterday. Did I read it? Or maybe you did not get into the details of it. He owned a radio station, and also he was a preacher, and so his radio station was closed down last year, and on Monday he was deported back to the United States. I'll let you know why. And we go to Benin. Maybe we don't get to talk about much about this country, but today I have some information and some conversation I want us to have about Benin and the elections that happened. That the opposition parties were all blocked out. The government vetted them and found that they failed to meet the criteria, the bare minimum of running for, elections in that country. So the elections happened with only, the parliamentary elections happened, but only the party that is allied to the government was the one that filed for candidates. Opposition parties are all banned. So after that, now the government wants to reach out to the opposition. Now it's calling for the national dialogue. Remember, like that Paul Biya had last week that ended last Friday, that kind. So we'll talk about Benin today. And also in Zambia, the government or the tax body there is thinking it very important, and now they want to tax Netflix. I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm sure you're familiar with Netflix. If you're watching me online, I'm sure you're familiar with Netflix. The United States online platform where you watch movies and TV series and everything. Nowadays, you just Netflix and chill. All right. So the government of Zambia wants to tax Netflix. I don't know how it's going to do this. The modalities. How are you going to tax Netflix? How? I don't know how it's planning to do that, but the government there of Edgar Lungu wants to do that, so we'll talk about it. And also for the first time, the people of Shona that lives here in Kenya, we have quite a huge number of Shona from Zimbabwe that live in a section. I see them someplace along Thika Road. I think I grew up seeing them. There's a way the women tie the headscarf that is quite distinct, so we know this is. So we didn't know they were Shonas when we were growing up, but now I'm getting to learn this is the group. And since they've been to Kenya since the 1960s, they've not been able to be given documents or national identification cards. The children have been denied birth certificates. So it has been very difficult for them. So they have been considered stateless, so we'll talk about that and the Kenyan step to recognize this. Then we will go and talk about some new information from Biafra. Remember what we were talking about yesterday. Nnamdi Kanu got to respond to that gentleman that was suggesting that, having an Igbo president for the 2023 Nigerian elections will solve the problem of Biafra once and for all. So he had something to say about that. And as well as Cameroon. The opposition leader was released on Saturday, remember, Mr. Maurice Kamto, but now he's come out and said the struggle has just started. So I don't know if that will have Paul Biya taken back to jail or what that will look like. But, Paul Biya lately has been trying to act as if, he's trying to extend a hand, a hand of peace and trying to reconcile the country together. But, let's see how that will work out for him. So that is just what we have in store for you. Don't go too far. So quickly on the Kenyan newspaper headlines, and then Dr. Matanga will join me to talk about today's topic. And something very interesting here on the Standard newspaper, and it says Raila, 4 members of parliament are wanted for DCI in car tax probe. I'll have to go to page 6 of the Standard newspaper and to just get the details of this story, because I think it's very, very interesting, and owing to who Raila is in this country. So we have to check out the story. And it says, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's luxury vehicle is among 18 top-of-the-range cars impounded by detectives over fraudulent registration claims. The Range Rover registration KCS 002D has been seized as Directorate of Criminal Investigations intensifies crackdown on 4x4 cars that authorities say have either not been paid for duty or were stolen. As such, at the National Transport and Safety Authority for registration, particulars of the vehicle did not yield any results as the DCI boss George Kinoti-led Team 6 answers on its ownership. It is not clear if the car is owned by Raila himself or is among a pool of cars that his supporters often provide for his use during campaigns, with the detectives expected to unravel the riddle. This story I must follow, and I will do that for you, and I'll bring you the details, or rather I'll share the details as we receive them. So that is on the front pages of the Standard newspaper. And another one there, how teachers sank 6 billion Kenya shillings in dying bank. And now Mwalimu Sacco bought Equatorial Commercial Bank and rebranded it to Spire Bank. Now internal documents show lender is bleeding in cash, and the customers and shareholders are running out of options. So that also is something that we will look at. And just down there on the left side page of the Standard front page, it says, now ODM accuses Jubilee of plotting to rig Kibra poll. Come on now, are we back to this? If you want to get the details of that, go to page 8 of the Standard newspaper. As I said, I'll just look at them very quickly, and then you just jump into our business of the day, and that is the African news. And then Dr. Matanga will join me later, and then we can look at the topic of the day. And I think it says that is the IEBC the stumbling block in Kenya's governance. So that is something that I will discuss with Dr. Matanga when he joins me here later on, if he will be able to join. And on the Daily Nation, when the police become gangsters. Now, the National Police Service Commission has warned the public to be on the lookout for a criminal who is armed and dangerous. But what should worry Kenyans more is that the suspect is a police officer gone rogue. Like, seriously. How are we even supposed to handle this information? We are being warned that a criminal is on the loose, but this criminal is a police who is armed. Okay, so the details of that story is on page 4 and 5 of the daily newspaper. Kenyans, please go read that and get the information and see how you can keep yourself safe from this rogue officer who is roaming around and with a full loaded gun. And still on the front pages there of the Daily Nation, Kupet wants grade 6 pupils to sit national exam, and high school teachers now say eliminating the test is a mistake since it will help during placement when learners transition to junior secondary under new curriculum. That is it. And if you want to know the story, go to page 6 of the Daily Nation. And how KTDA steals from tea farmers thanks to an inept marketing structure and that subjects them to servitude. Growers feel abandoned and turned into prisoners of a monolith that purports to stand for them. So we know tea industry was was thriving very much, especially during the time of former President Moi, but now it seems to be having a lot of problems. Tea and coffee industries, farmers, and now we see that it's becoming something else, and the farmers, they are not gaining much. So if you want to know the details, go to page 10, 11, and 12. And also here, Catholics set new rules for Harambes, and they say a church to adopt cashless donations through check or mobile money transfer and keep a record of any gift to a religious leader exceeding 50,000 Kenya shillings, which should be acknowledged by a letter. Alrighty then, so any corrupt Catholic priest there in Kenya or that is serving in the Catholic Church, there you go. I think now it will be very difficult for get anything, especially from these politicians who visit the churches and give these very wonderful gifts to the priest there. So thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching us from. This, of course, is Good Morning Africa show. Now let's just get straight to African matters here. And we start with Uganda, where Uganda police has sealed off Bobi Wine's home in the capital, Kampala, hours after cancelling his music concert that was to coincide with the country's Independence Day celebrations. The musician turned politician has tweeted photos showing police vehicles surrounding his home, as well as spiked road barriers as erected on a road leading to his house. He claimed police had also sealed off his lakeside property, One Love Beach, Busabala, the planned venue of the cancelled music concert. Now, Assistant Inspector General of Police Asumana Mugwenyi said organizers of the concert failed to heed minimum security standards. Nile Post Nile's site reported he cited lack of plans for medical care, traffic control, crowd control, and security. And we head to Malawi, where police in Malawi have named an officer killed on Tuesday during clashes of anti-government protesters in Musundwe, a trading outpost west of the capital city in the Lilongwe. Police spokesperson James Kadazerab told news agency AFP that Officer Usumani Imedi had been stoned to death and killed by rioters and criminals. He was among officers who confronted the demonstrators who had blocked the main road in Musundwe, an opposition stronghold, to stop supporters of President Peter Mutharika's from attending his first rally in the city since his controversial election win in May. And then we head to Nigeria, where unknown gunmen are now asking for a ransom after at least 9 people were kidnapped on Monday evening in the Nigerian capital, Abuja. They abducted the victims from an area on the outskirts of the city. Reports say the victims include a 12-year-old boy. Eyewitnesses say the gunmen were dressed in military uniform and turned up in large numbers. They laid an ambush along a main road and fired shots at moving vehicles, forcing them to stop. The vehicle's occupants were then shepherded at gunpoint into the bush. Now that is very dangerous there. The insecurity in Nigeria is really worrying, and we will talk about it. We move to Egypt, where Egypt's State Security Prosecution Court has released 200 people arrested, along with hundreds of others during rare protests in Cairo and other towns in September, their lawyer said in a Facebook post. They had faced charges of protesting without permission and using social media to promote terrorism, according to the Egyptian Commission for Rights and Freedoms. The Egyptian Center for Economic and Social Rights said 2,865 people had faced prosecution from anti-government protests that broke out on 20th of September. And we are now in Sudan, where Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have given Sudan an aid package worth $1.5 billion. A Reuters news agency reports, quoting Sudan's finance minister. The aid was agreed shortly after President Omar al-Bashir was overthrown in April as a way to show up the military leaders who had ousted him. Reuters quotes Finance Minister Ibrahim El-Dadawi as saying that $500 million has been deposited in Sudan's central bank, and $1 billion worth of petroleum products and foods have also been sent. The country's economy has been struggling since it lost most of its oil fields when South Sudan declared independence in 2011. Now, queues of foods and bread, of course, are not uncommon in Sudan, and that is the aid is expected to help Sudan go a long way. And we go to Rwanda, where Rwanda has opened Africa's first smartphone manufacturing plant in the capital, Kigali, in an event attended by President Paul Kagame. Manufactured by technology company Mara Group, the Mara X and Mara Z smartphones will use Google's Android operating system and cost around 175 Rwandan francs, or that is equivalent to around 190 US dollars. And this is the first smartphone manufactured in Africa, and Mara CEO Ashish Takar told news agencies Reuters during a tour of the plant on Monday the company was targeting customers willing to pay more for quality, the CEO also added. And still in Rwanda, and an American preacher who was arrested on Monday in the country for holding an illegal meeting with journalists has been deported. The New Times of Rwanda newspaper has reported. Rwandan Directorate General for Immigration and Immigration Regis Gatarayihi is quoted by paper as saying evangelist Greg Schoff was removed from the country for being a prohibited immigrant, adding that he was involved in activities that cause a public disorder. The preacher had been due to criticized the Rwandan government for shutting down his radio station and his church. In May, the preacher lost an appeal against the government's media regulator to get his station to be reopened, leading him to question the extent of freedom of expression in Rwanda. He did not even realize he was in Africa, leave alone Rwanda. When you question some things, you just... Anyway, we go to Benin, where Benin Thursday, tomorrow, October 10th, will start a political dialogue called for by the President Patrice Talon. The objective is to get out the political crisis after the parliamentary elections of 28th April, when the opposition was excluded. In the weeks before Benin's April 28th elections, police used tear gas to disperse demonstrators led by former Presidents Anis Faure Soglo and Thomas Boni Yai, who called for a boycott of the opposition-less election. Voter turnout in previous elections in Benin never fell below 50%, yet only 23% of eligible voters casted their votes in the April poll. Voters had a little taste for an election devoid of competition when all opposition parties were disqualified. Like 23% was the turnout of all registered voters. How do you even sit pretty as a president of any country when even half of the country of the registered voters did not even turn out to vote, leave alone even elect you? Anyway, we'll talk about it, the things that happen in this continent. Very interesting. And we go to Zambia, another ridiculous thing. I don't know how they're even going to do this. But now Zambia's government is planning to start taxing the popular online streaming service Netflix, arguing that the company generates revenue in the country but does not contribute to its national budget. Anyway, the government also argues that Netflix does not abide by local content regulations that require television stations in the country to have up to 60% of local programs that promote the nation's culture. Netflix is an American company. Maybe that's where the government needs to know. It is an American company whose main business is subscription-based streaming service, which offers online streaming of a library of films, television programs, including those produced in-house. It has over 150 million paid subscriptions worldwide. It is not from Zambia. It is an American-based online platform. All right, we'll talk about it. Please write your thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say about this. Please talk to me. And hello to you, Abdi Samad Ali. I saw you last night. I wasn't a part of the show, but Dr. Matanga had a very huge show here, and I saw you very active there. I just watched it after my classes. I go to evening classes, so I watched it, and it was a very successful show. But you, Abdi Samad, sijui kama wewe ni mchokozi. All right, and now we come to Kenya, where for the first time, children from Kenya's stateless Shona group will receive the government's issued certificates, which will give them opportunities and rights long denied to the community. Kenya's move to end the plight of the Shona comes amid a global campaign to eradicate stateless thought to affect an estimated 10 million people worldwide who are not recognized as nationals by any country. Kenya sent a high-level delegation to a major intergovernmental meeting in Geneva on Monday to discuss progress at the midpoint of the I Belong campaign ahead of the 2024 deadline. Now, a person may be stateless as a result of discrimination based on ethnicity, religion, or gender, and the transfer of territory between states. That also could be one of the reasons a person can be stateless, or conflicting nationality laws. Now, stateless people often lack documentation necessary to attend schools, open a bank account, get a job, passport, register to have a mobile phone line, or enter government buildings. This is according to the United Nations Refugee Agencies. And we move over to Cameroon, where a Cameroonian opposition leader who was released from jail on Saturday following a presidential amnesty has vowed to intensify his fight against electoral fraud and injustice in the country. Professor Maurice Kamto, president of Cameroon's Renaissance Movement, and more than 100 militants of the political outfit were freed when President Paul Biya asked military tribunals in the country to halt their prosecution. Addressing supporters at the Yaoundé residency shortly after his release, the fearless opposition leader promised that real battle is yet to start. In other words, a luta continua. And I guess Maurice Kamto should be prepared to go back to jail again. I don't know, but write to me. Let me know your thoughts on this. And another seems to be a row between Kenya and Somalia. Somalia has protested what it said is the violation of its airspace by Kenya after an aircraft flew from Nairobi directly to Kismayo instead of first landing in the capital Mogadishu. The Somali Civil Aviation Authority filed the complaint against Kenya to the UN agency International Civil Aviation Authority. A Somali online platform Hiran said, quoting unnamed officials on Saturday, a Kenyan registered Fokker 50 plane 5Y JXJ carrying politicians landed in Kismayo, the capital of Jubaland state, without making a stopover in Mogadishu as required. And we go to South Sudan, where the United States ambassador to South Sudan, Thomas Hushek, is now saying that the United States stands ready to impose more sanctions or if President Salva Kiir's administration does not implement the deal to end South Sudan's civil conflict. Hushek, speaking to reporters in Juba on Tuesday, urged South Sudan's leaders to focus on carrying out the September 2018 peace agreement and warned that United States sanctions may be strengthened. If that does not happen, Hushek seemed to, bristle at Kiir's recent statement in which he said a unity government would be formed by a November deadline with or without opposition leader Riek Machar. And we have been talking about this. And now the US is coming in and saying, no, you can't do that. We need all the players on the table, so stop playing with us. They're telling President Riek Machar, Biafra, and the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has said the Igbo presidency will not end the ongoing Biafra agitation. Kanu said this during his second broadcast of the month on Radio Biafra on Monday. And Kanu maintained that those clamoring for Igbo presidency in 2023 were wasting their time. And the IPOB leader further stated that the Igbo presidency is a dream. It is like the second Niger bridge and the Ogoni cleanup, hence will not stop Biafra agitation. And if you're wondering what the Ogoni cleanup there, the one Nnamdi Kanu is referring to about, I will just fill you in. If at all you've ever had somebody by the name Ken Wiwa or something like that. So we will talk about it, but that is the latest from Africa this morning. Good morning and thank you for joining us. And so, all right, so we have a lot to talk about from the news that I had just read, and we started with, Uganda. So let's just look at that and then we proceed as we go to the rest of the stories there. So Ugandan police and Bobi Wine are at it again. I think this is the script is not new. We saw it with the long-suffering opposition leader. What is his name? Besigye. Yeah, he is long-suffering. You know, he's. I mean, as Doctor says here, he's been molested by the Ugandan government time and time again, and now they are on with Bobi Wine. But on this one, I think I don't know. Maybe it is the manner in which the government did it, but to some extent, you would understand why the government would take such measures. Today, on Wednesday, is the Independence Day celebrations there in Uganda. Of course, this is a national day, right? So Mr. Bobi Wine and his People Power movement decides this will be a great opportunity for him to also hold a concert on the same day, a political concert or whatever concert that was supposed to be today. And owing to the history that he already has with the authority in Uganda, and please, I'm all for, expressing yourself and on every right, like nobody should violate your right, which of course these police officers are now doing that, but also Mr. Bobi Wine. But him deciding that an important day like Independence Day, and this is the day he wants to organize for a concert, did he really think that they will allow him to do that? Or is Mr. Bobi Wine, he really knows what he's doing and this is a strategy because he knew very well and good that the Ugandan authority, the Ugandan government will not allow him to do this. So you know what happens? He announces he's going to have a concert. Of course, he knows the police will be sent to to barricade his house. So he's been barricaded in his house since yesterday. He's been unable to leave, and now he's getting the attention that perhaps he wanted. He's getting the attention and he's showing the world, look at how I'm being molested by the Ugandan government. But what I don't understand is why is the Ugandan government and the police always falling into this bait? If you ask me, this is a bait. Bobi Wine was baiting the government because he knew well and good they will not allow him to have the concert. First of all, he was banned to have concerts. Remember when they released him from jail a couple of months ago? He was banned from having a concert or from being in a crowd of a certain amount of people. He was banned from having that. So he decided he's going to have a concert today when the country is celebrating Independence Day. And he knows very well they will not allow him to have it. So what does he do? He announces he will have it. He has preparations for the day. And he knew well that the government will send the police. So I don't know if this is just his strategy because we've not heard so much from him. Remember, his red beret and his was banned, and that is the color for his movement, the People Power movement. It's red, and it was banned just the other day because the government gazetted that as an official uniform of the Ugandan Defense Forces. So if you're found wearing a red beret, even if you're a civilian, and I think we're having that conversation here with Dr. Matsanga, and they said they had like the national emblem. No, they did not have the national emblem. It has the People Power Movement emblem on it, so it did not have any national logo or emblem put on it. So I don't think it broke the law in any way, and it did not break the law in any way. So anyway, but the government said that this is now part of the Uganda Defense Forces uniform. So any civilian found wearing this will be infringing the law. So that also Bobi Wine came out and protested this. And now we see he wanted to have this concert. And now, even as we speak right now, the police have barricaded his home, and he's not able to leave. And his home in the capital in Kampala hours after the cancellation of his music concert that was to coincide with the country's Independence Day celebrations. Now, the musician turned politician has tweeted photos. I was just looking at them on social media, and this is exactly what Bobi Wine wanted. Has tweeted photos showing police vehicles surrounding his home, as well as a spiked road barriers erected on a road leading to the house. Perhaps after that, I think the guy must have just gone to sleep very quietly because he knows he has the government, the country's security all around his home, and he's very safe. I don't know if maybe if they just leave him, they don't attract that attention towards him, and then they see how that will work out. They just let him go, have his concerts like he used to have. He's first an artist before he became a member of parliament. He became a politician. But you see, it is things like that that even allowed him to be elected. So if you just let him go have his concert and just be quiet about it, as long as he meets he has the security in check and everything that is required for him to hold this concert. But now the police came out and said that he did not adhere to the minimum security standards. I don't know which these are. And also they said that he did not have plans for medical care and traffic control and crowd control and security. And maybe the police around that place refused to offer him that, because that is something that he should go and talk to the authority that is responsible around that area, so that you're given a permit to even do the concert. So apparently he did not have these things, which I know is just it's perhaps it's not even true. I mean, it's Uganda we're talking about. But still, him choosing to have this concert on this day, I think he's really trying. He tried it, and I think it was just a strategy. Unfortunately, the government, fell for it. It was just a bait, and now he has all the attention. And people continue looking at him like this young man who's coming out and is trying to help our people, but is constantly being beaten, being harassed by the government. So now he'll get the pity votes. I don't know how much that will be, but Ugandan elections are slowly nearing. So People Power Movement is done politically by Museveni. Okay, that is according to Ogebe. Ogebe, good morning to you. Thank you for joining. I don't know where you're watching us from. You've never, I don't know. Please remind me where you watch us from. Ako Ebot, you're saying he's senile, crazy, and devilish in his ways. Like or not, he gonna do it. I know, but also I think he knew very well, Mr. I don't know if it's Mr. there, but Ako Ebot. Bobby Wine knew that he would not be allowed to do this. You think he did not know? He knew. The people who keep falling for his tricks is the government and the authority and the police there. Because he knows that he will not be allowed to have this concert. He knows they'll come to his house and barricade like they used to do. I don't know if they still do that to, the opposition leader, Besigye. I don't know if they still do that. So he knows. So that is just a strategy, to bring to attention. And now he's taking photos and showing how he's being molested and how he's been locked. It's a lockdown at his place and he cannot even leave, and how his rights are being infringed and how he's being molested. So you can see it's a strategy that is working, but over and over again, you see the government is falling into it. They should just let him. The concert will happen and nobody will even talk about it. But you keep banning this, you keep stopping, you keep barricading him, and you're only bringing to him the attention that actually he wants, and it's counterproductive, I think, for the Ugandan government, So there you go. That is the latest there from Uganda. And okay, but you're saying you're watching from Germany. Okay, guten Morgen. And Malawi there, the elections that happened in May in Malawi, that was shambolic to start with. And I think it happened in... is it May 28th? Because South African elections happened on May 8th, and then Malawian elections, May 21st, if I'm not wrong. Please, but it was in May. So, of course, the opposition was not very happy, and they came out and said these elections were shambolic. President Mutharika was the predecessor, and he was elected again. And remember, he's the brother to the late President Mbingu Mutharika, who died. And even the wife of his late brother was supporting the then, who was now his vice president, but now the opposition leader, the wife of his sister-in-law was supporting his opposition, that is his former vice president. So it was quite murky there. And even in his inauguration, the sister-in-law did not show up. And she's not just a sister-in-law, but she is the wife of the former president, who was the brother to now the president, Peter Mutharika. Okay, it's complicated. But Peter Mutharika is the president of Malawi there. And there has been protests that happened, that followed, and chaos that followed after the elections, because the opposition came out and said the playing field was not fair, the elections were shambolic, it was just a formality, the president had rigged. Remember, let's just pedal just a little back so that you're able to understand why the opposition might be feeling how it's feeling. So opposition goes to court on Friday, contest the presidential elections, and then the court upholds that and said, okay, fine, there's substantial, evidence here to what has been presented. So I think this is a case worth listening to. And then on Saturday morning, now the official results are halted, right? And then on Monday, while the case was supposed to be starting, the High Court convenes and says President Mutharika was elected free and fair. And then 2 hours later, was it even less than an hour, this inauguration ceremony is starting. You see, so it is something that had already been planned, and they have been calling out for the chairperson of the Electoral Commission there in Malawi to be fired in the manner in which the elections are conducted. And they're saying the Electoral Commission is in bed with the government. Don't they all in a lot of our countries here in Africa? You know, the Electoral Commission and the government. So is there even a separation of these institutions? Because it's normally seen as that. Very few occasions does this incumbent lose, but normally it's a different ball game. In very few instances that we can point out, like what happened in Ghana, or even here in Kenya when President Moi was leaving power. But he had given the mandate to now President Uhuru Kenyatta towards. So maybe that was different. But after that, we've seen the chaos that the country has seen after elections that have been happening in this country. So anyway, so that is where Malawi is today. So now the presidential supporters wanted to go have a rally in a place where it's opposition stronghold, and protests, started there, and one police officer lost his life there. So that's very sad news coming from Malawi. And now in Nigeria, like I said, abductions has become a very lucrative business there in Nigeria. And yesterday, at least 9 people were kidnapped, on Monday evening in the Nigerian capital, Abuja. They abducted the victims from an area on the outskirts of the city, and the victims include a 12-year-old boy, and eyewitnesses say the gunmen were dressed in military uniform. Now, that is the scariest part, and turned up in large numbers. So, could this be Boko Haram? They were dressed in military uniform and they were in huge number. They laid an ambush along a main road and fired shots at moving vehicles, forcing them to stop, because I don't think the military will do this. This has the hallmarks of Boko Haram from reading this information. And they fired on moving vehicles, and the vehicles' occupants were then taken on gunpoint to the bushes, and 9 people were kidnapped then, because this is how Boko Haram has been sustaining itself, by abductions. And we're just criminals, and then you send they ask you for money, you send them, and then they're able to release your person or your loved ones. So this is something that is happening in Nigeria. This should worry the government. I was just looking for some information. I don't know what the government has said about this. And this is not the first time. I think even the national coach team there, the national coach for the football team there in Nigeria, his mother was abducted for a couple of weeks. And then she was released after he paid a sum of money. And so it's worrying. And even another known player. So they just abduct people. It has become very lucrative, and they're making money out of it. Unfortunately, some victims don't get out alive. They're able to lose their lives if they require money that these kidnappers are looking for, and is not able to be given. So what is worrying here to me is these gunmen were dressed in a military uniform, and they were in huge numbers. I don't suppose this could be the military, in Nigerian military men. I don't think this could be them. But this looks like something Boko Haram would do, because they dress like the military. They have the military attire. So they are the ones who I presume performed this act. And then we go to Egypt, where the Egypt State Security Prosecution Court has released 200 people arrested, along with hundreds of others, during the rear protest there in Cairo and other towns in September. Remember, this protest was sparkled after there's this guy who is now in I think he's in Spain there. He's an Egyptian, and his family also have been receiving tenders, construction tenders from the Egyptian government, starting from his father. So he comes from a family that has been in very close partnership with the government of Egypt. Before even now government Abdel Sisi became president, but from before, even when Hosni Mubarak was the president, and his family has been having contracts from the government and tenders and things like that. So he came out. He's now in Spain. He went there for his safety, and he came out and said, the government of Egypt is very corrupt, and in the manner in which they give these tenders, even he brought evidence on how even his family was doing business with the government of Egypt in very fraudulent manners. And so he's the one who incited the wave of protest that started, but of course did not go so far, did not even reach the levels of the 2011 Arab Spring protest. But it appeared as though this was the intention of this person. Of course, President al-Sisi came out and said this is rubbish. And remember, the Egyptian media is very, very controlled with the government. You cannot publish anything the government will not like. You cannot criticize the government. You cannot, freedom of speech or press in Egypt is very minimal. So even the Egyptian press was not even covering this protest or covering this person until the president himself brought it up in a meeting, and he was asked, so why are you building 5 more villas for the several presidential villas? He's saying, well, the president needs to have more homes in the different parts of the country. So that was his response to that, because this is something this guy had brought up. So during a breakfast meeting, I don't know what conference that was, must have been an international media person that asked that to journalists, because Egyptian journalists cannot ask things like that. You cannot question the government in that manner. And so he said, what is wrong with the president having several houses? You would think, okay, with an economy that is, not very good, and the unemployment rate has been on an all-time high, then people are like, but that should not even be, the priority right now. But there you go. So that is just some of the things that sparkled this new wave of protest that did not last very long. I think it went for 2 Fridays. I don't know if they'll be protesting this coming Friday. They want it to take the form of the protest in Algeria. Every Friday, people are out in the street, but come Saturday or Sunday or Monday, they're going back to work. So it's quite productive in the manner in which they have been protesting there in Algeria, and that's quite good. So I don't know if Egyptians think that will happen there under al-Sisi. They should know that al-Sisi is quite close with Khalifa Haftar. So I don't know. He might seek for some reinforcement over there. Just saying. And we move to South Sudan, where now Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have given Sudan an aid package worth $1.5 billion. Now, the aid was agreed shortly after President Omar al-Bashir was overthrown in April as a way to shore up the military leaders who had ousted him. Yes, after the military went to visit, they'd gone to Saudi Arabia, then the UAE, then they went to Egypt, and then they came back to the military council. So they were promised this amount of money because Sudan really, with the sanctions and the being blacklisted as the countries that sponsors terrorism across the world, Sudan, it does not have a lot of foreign investors in that country, and that has really comes with a very hefty price that the economy has been paying. So money was promised after the ousting of President Omar al-Bashir, and now, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates has kept their part of the bargain. I don't know the price tag that comes with this, money, with this, what is it? And I think we had part of this conversation yesterday. Yes, but it's not just aid. Remember, South Sudan, not South Sudan, and which we'll talk about South Sudan. But Sudan army, part of the Janjaweed, the Sudan Rapid Force, part of that, they're fighting with Saudi Arabia and UAE army in Yemen. So Sudan is helping them. They've taken some Sudan army men there, and they're fighting along them in Yemen. right? And of course, Yemen is being supported by Iran and also I think Turkey, if not wrong. But Saudi Arabia, they're not very good fighters. Look at how the Houthi rebels bombed one of their key refineries there. They're not quite good fighters there. So Janjaweed has been helping them a big deal. So I think that is the stake. I think that is the kind of coalition they have and others. But I know this money, the price tag there is. You can tell me what is it again? These two countries are getting out of Sudan, outside of Sudan, helping them in the war in Yemen. What else are they getting? What else will not South Sudan, but Sudan, have to give up for them to continue to receive this amount of money. Ashu Atem, good morning to you. Is it good morning yet? Yeah, I think it is. Just a few minutes towards the top of the hour. Remember, Dr. Matsanga might join me. He's been very busy lately. So last night he had a show by himself because I had to go to class. So I was not present. But I think we'll be having another show tomorrow in the evening. I think I'll be present. But during the day, he's become very busy. I'll ask him sometimes to even join us through Skype if he's not able to make it to the show. I'm sure you all guys will appreciate that. But Emeka Nweke, you're saying Boko Haram have been recruited into various security apparatus of Nigeria under the disguise of repentant terrorists. Oh, really? You mean to tell me? So they are the ones the government of Nigeria is using to, well, I don't want to insinuate, but that is very serious. Once they sort of come back and act as if they're normal, law-abiding citizens of Nigeria, they're recruited back to the army, and then they're used to carry out the dirty work of the government. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Emeka Nweke? Because now I'm worried. Like, seriously. Dominic Nwando, you're saying Africa don't have democracy. What Africa is practicing is evilcracy. Hey, that's a new term. Hashtag evilcracy. Dominic Nwando, you're too creative. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Emeka saying, Miriam, with due respect, you are so I'm so captivating. Come on. I'm humbled. Don't make me start blushing now, but thank you. Umbesh Arthur, you're saying diplomatic, mischievous visits. I know. I'm always suspicious. Of these three marketeers. That is Egypt, that is UAE, and that is the Saudi. Every time I hear these three leaders are meeting, I literally fidget because you don't know what they're planning. It's, the unholy trinity. Is it? Or maybe, I don't know. All right, but you talk to me, let me know. And Ugochukwu Khan, you're saying, let's expose those Nigerian leaders as all its criminals from president to the end. Poor people are dying. We love the program and we're always following up. And thank you so much. And here at Punchline Africa, we absolutely appreciate your support. And we do this because of you. If you're not there and if you're not supportive of us, we will not find a reason to be sitting here every day and to discuss African matters. And as I keep saying here, we need to tell our own stories and we need to find our own solutions. And we need to criticize all our bad leadership, and we need to be allowed to talk and encourage that which is good, and talk about that which is not so good. So that is the only way we can realize change. All right. Okay. Ashu. Well, I just leave that there. But Abdi Samad Ali, you're saying doctor is busy. Doctor is busy during the maritime water. Yesterday, I watched this show in the evening, later on after 9. And it appears it was a very good show. So I don't know what you're saying there, Abdi Samad, but glad you're here. Thank you. Joseph Otto, you're saying Rwanda marathon. I'm excited. I'm also very excited. Rwanda has, in fact, this is the next conversation that I wanted us to talk about. So Rwanda has opened Africa First smartphone manufacturing plant in the capital, Kigali. I think that is kudos. And then manufactured by technology company Mara Group. But I wish, and this is not me being racist, please, I understand where I'm coming from. I wish this was under like a legit African entrepreneur. And I'm not disputing the Mara Group CEO Ashish Takar, I'm assuming this person is Indian, and I'm not a racist. I'm just saying. But it is a good thing that this company is now in Africa and is manufacturing and has manufactured the first smartphone, has put up the first smartphone manufacturing plant in the capital, Kigali. And of course, it will be manufactured by technology company Mara Group, and the phones will be called, there's a Mara X and a Mara Z or a Z. I don't know if you speak the British English or the American English. So if you're speaking the American English, that will be a Z, but if it's from the British, then that will be a Mara Z smartphones, and we'll use Google's Android operating system, and the cost will be about $190 US. That is pretty affordable. 190. That's about 19,000 Kenya shillings. Not too bad. I think a few. Yes, I think they're looking at the mass market there. And this is the first smartphone manufacturer in Africa. And of course, the Mara CEOs told Reuters on Monday, and the company was targeting customers willing to pay more for quality. But I'm thinking this is not too much. $190 is not like too much. This is quite an affordable phone. So I'm just hoping the quality is good. And this is kudos to Africa, as much as it have been a pleasure to see, like, it's a black face, in that is, but still, it's a good progress for Africa, and I'm not being a racist, please. So don't get me wrong. Farmajo and Kagame have similar leadership and loved by their people. Emeka, you're saying yes, the Boko Haram are being released. You can verify. Yes, I've had that information, that news before. And what I heard from that is that the ex-Boko Haram fighters are now being integrated back into community, and they're being habilitated. So what the part I did not know is that the government is absorbing them into the army and using them to do its dirty job. That is the part I did not know that you shocked me with this morning. So thank you so much. Abdisamad Ali, you're saying hunger. The hunger politics. And they saying Kenya could have been like Rwanda, building phones and cars, but they are busy trying to steal other people's water. Come on. I thought you're saying they're busy, the leaders that we elect, a majority of them are busy with corruption. Yes, I think that is what is killing us, Kenya. It's not like we've directed all our efforts in the Indian Ocean, Abdisamad, but I understand where you're coming from. And yes, Ombesh Arthur, you're saying there's a hidden agenda behind the project, cheap labor. Which project? The Rwandan fast smartphone manufacturing. But that is what has brought China to the powerhouse it is today, the cheap labor in China. Even Trump himself. All his ties and all, even the daughter, she has a clothing line. All the clothes come from China, because China, you get all you ask for. If you want high-end products or low-end, they cater for everybody. But China, the cheap labor is what has brought China to the powerhouse, economic powerhouse it is today, because things they are cheap, there's cheap labor, which sometimes not are very good. But you'd rather be paid low, but there's a job security, or you're paid more and then you don't have the job security. I don't know, but you're saying, so this might take advantage of the poor Rwandese over there. That is what you're saying there. And also Zimbabwe, first African car. Which Zimbabwe? The one of Robert Mugabe has made the first African car. Okay. And it's called what? Please. Let me know. I didn't know that. Let me know. Let me know this car from Zimbabwe. What is the name of this car? I did not know that. I know a lot of those international car makers. They have assembling plants in different parts of Africa. And Peugeot, that is a French car maker, said they were going to have an assembling plant here in Kenya. I don't know if it has happened. That was earlier this year when French President Emmanuel Macron visited Kenya, and he said that is one of the things that the country intended to do. So keep talking to me. So there you go. But now also in Rwanda, we know Rwanda, and I know President Kagame has been praised for his good job, and he's a working dictator. Let's not even He is a dictator. And sometimes people say that for a country to do well, or for a country to be stable, the leader must sometimes possess some level of dictatorship in them so that, people can listen or things can get done in a country. Like a no-nonsense kind of a leader. But I think there's a difference between a no-nonsense kind of a leader and a dictator. Paul Kagame borders dictator. Actually, he's not a full-blown dictator like Kim Jong-un, but he is, to some extent, his leadership style. It's he's a no-nonsense leader that has been established. But sometimes when it comes to matters democracy and all that, and the freedom to even to express, so we see here an American preacher was arrested on Monday for holding an illegal meeting with a journalist. So this guy, his radio station was closed down last year, so he decided to call for a press conference and to talk to journalists there. I don't know which journalists even went, and if still they have their job, if at all they were Rwandese. And he wanted to talk about this. So the government said, okay, so we closed down your radio station last year, because he was, I don't know, whatever he was preaching, I think the government did not like very much. And so they said, what? And now you're calling a press conference and you want to talk about this, because the Rwandan Directorate General for Immigration and Immigration said that Greg, who is this evangelist, was removed from the country for being a prohibited immigrant, adding that he was involved in activities that cause public disorder. And also, but I think on this part, maybe our Kenyan government should borrow from, Paul Kagame in the no-nonsense part of it. He closed down around 700 churches. So far, they've been closed. Of course, they've been accused of noise pollution. But outside of that, when you see the fracas and the chaos that is the Kenyan church here today, these are the evangelical churches especially, where the politicians go there and a lot of things are happening, and the corruption and the lying that comes with that. I think the government should perhaps borrow that from Kagame. Not everything Kagame does, but I think borrow that part and come hard on this church that are mushrooming every day. You find churches in estates, in like 4, 5, 6, 7 churches in the same estate, and they're very noisy. So people who even live in those estates, I feel sorry for them, because these churches have like a Friday night prayers the whole night until morning. You can't even sleep. And I'm a Christian, so don't get me wrong, and I'm in support of that. But still, there has to be a way that these things are regulated. So Paul Kagame has been very clear, and 700 churches that did not meet the minimum requirement was struck out. And so you can't just start a church in Rwanda, and I think that perhaps should be introduced here in Kenya, like for real. We're normally here complaining about the Kenyan church, and a lot of pastors are scandalous, and you see even some videos making online, you see them from leading people who are considered leading have churches here in Kenya. It's just a very sorry state. So the government should borrow this, I think, from Rwanda to just bring some sanity in the churches here in Kenya. It's getting out of hand. So on this one, I support. But now on this case of Rwanda, this pastor, I think, was very critical. Being that he's a white man from America, he thought, you know what, freedom of speech, is it Second Amendment there in America? He thought he'll bring that to Africa. No, it does not work to that, especially not in Rwanda. So they say they closed down his radio station last year, and now he was calling a press conference and to lament about this and say, the government closed down my radio station. They're not even giving me any reasons why, or they're not telling me when it will be opened. But of course, the government's media regulator he made an appeal that was denied to reopen his radio station. And now by him calling a press conference on Monday to try to address this, or try to bring this to the attention of the rest of the world, that is how he got himself deported back to the United States of America. How about that? Rwanda. It's a very interesting country. I would want to visit there one day. Of course, I don't know if it will be safe since I criticize so much or I talk about it so much, I don't think it will be, I don't know, but I will be interested in visiting. And I hear Paul Kagame has done well. Kigali is one of the cleanest cities in Africa, and it is developing in ways that it's very admirable. So I think it's doing also a host of good things there in Rwanda there, Mr. Paul Kagame. Okay, so let me see. Abdisamad here, you're saying kids under 18 need dictator parent for them to go in bed on time and not start taking drugs. That is true. And I think I'm not really a dictator, but in my house, we don't have democracy as such. When I say go to bed, I mean that. This thing of you're giving kids too much democracy. They have a say. It's good for a child to have a say. It helps in developing their own personality and all that, and gives them confidence to express themselves. But there should be a very clear line, a very clear line, all right? Because if they keep breaking those, simple rules at home, when they get out of that house, they'll go breaking the law. And, when you break the law, you'll end up in prison. So they should understand that. Emeka Nweke, you're saying we have a car manufacturing company in Biafra land, Inoson Motors. Oh, really? That's very nice. And you're also seeing most of the churches in Africa are business enterprise. They are scammers. That is true. You know what? Yes. And Dombesh, I think you're saying that's why they collect tithes from we attending the church. Well, tithe is it's just the manner that they do it that is outside of what is even acceptable in the Bible. And most of these top pastors own private jets and live lavish lifestyles. That is very true, at the expense of the poor who go and give everything they have over there. All right, so now, Benin on Thursday, October 10th, that is tomorrow, will start a political dialogue called by President Patrice Talon. The objective is to get out of the political crisis after the parliamentary elections of the 28th of April, when the opposition was excluded. All right. So in Benin, this is what happened in April 28th in the parliamentary elections. All the opposition candidates, all the opposition parties were banned from participating in the elections. So in short, only the ruling party went to election by itself. All right? The ridiculousness in that. So that was an election. So in return of the registered voters, in the history of voting in Benin, there's never been like a low turnout, like perhaps 50%, if that has been the lowest turnout. But in the April elections, 23% of the registered voters are the ones who turned out to vote in the parliamentary elections, because the rest of the population felt, and why are we going to even vote if the people that we would like to to vote for have been cancelled? They're not part of the elections. Like, how do you even go voting with one party and you still sit there and think you have a democracy? I'm telling you the things that happen in this continent. Sometimes I read this news and I'm like, what? I even stop in the middle. What? How is this even acceptable? So the president banned all the political parties, and so in the weeks before Benin's April 28th election, police used tear gas to disperse demonstrators led by former President Nice Forest Soglo and Thomas Boniai, who called for a boycott of the opposition-less election. Yeah, so the government went to election by itself. And voter turnout in previous elections in Benin never fell before 50%, but this time it was about 23%. And voters had little taste for an election devoid of competition when all opposition parties were disqualified. So now it has been very difficult for Mr. Patrice Talon to lead there in Benin. So he realized he needs everybody else to come together to the table so that the country can move forward. Because since then, I think there's been even a lot of anarchy from the people there in Benin. So now he calls for a national dialogue, like that one that Paul Biya had that ended last week. So the Benin president, after banning opposition from participating in the elections in April, that was a big flop, and 23% turning, that should be a huge indictment to any government with some sense. Because if only 23% of the registered voters turn out to vote, how are you even confident? How do you even wake up in the morning and lead with confidence and say, you know what, my party has the most people, has the most members of parliament. In parliament, my party is the ruling party in a country. How do you even see that with confidence when 23% of the people that are supposed to be voting, out of 100%, 23% are the ones who even care to come and vote? And these could be the diehards that are aligned to the president's party. And you sit there with confidence calling yourself a president of a country. So now after that now the president is trying to reach out to the opposition. The people who did not want to participate in the elections in April, remember? So now Patrice is saying, now let's all come together. Let's all reason together because we have a country to build. We have a country to work on. We have a country that we need to develop and move forward. How crazy is this? Does he really expect the opposition to come? Because I know if the opposition now will be allowed to come or should want to come into this crazy thing the president here is calling the national dialogue or a political dialogue, whatever it is the country is calling it, I think the first precondition will be no, let's go back to and redo those elections that were a sham, very shambolic, because how do you just vote and only one party is the one that is allowed to participate because the government disqualified the rest of the parties. And now he's calling for a political solution. When you see such move, that did not come from Mr. Patrice alone. That must have come from, the puppeteer masters, the sponsors, the donors. They said, you have to stop with this nonsense. The country is not going the right direction. You call the other players and come to the table and talk. I don't know if Benin's, opposition would want to come. And I wouldn't, because why? Unless we're going for another fresh election, which I think the opposition will call for. So this is a story that I'll keep you up to date with, and we'll continue talking about it. Countries like Benin, it's very difficult to get information from them. I think it's when you see the government banning all political parties except that which is in power, that tells you a lot of freedoms there are very limited. Freedom of expression, freedom of talk about the media freedom and all that. So it's very difficult to get information from Benin, but there you go. That's what is happening now. So now the president, after banning opposition parties from participating in the April election, now he's saying, now let's come together and reason together and build our country and have a political solution. But how? How does he intend to do that? How does he want these people to come on board? That is just a ridiculousness that took place last week with the national dialogue that Paul Biya had there in Cameroon, and of course the leading figures in Ambazonia or in the Anglophone-speaking region did not turn up, did not show up to these talks. So who was he talking to? Because Anglophone secession matter is the core. Was the core of this national dialogue. So to leave the people who were supposed to be part and parcel of that dialogue, it's just like Mr. Salva Kiir now saying that, threatening that he wants to continue, go ahead and form a unity government without Riek Machar. Like, how even are you even going to do that? And we will talk about that in a short bit. So that is what is happening there in Benin and in Zambia. Please talk to me. Help me understand. Maybe I'm the one who does not. I know technology to an extent that can help me in my day-to-day life, but I'm not a super tech person, but I understand the basic bits of it that makes me just survive in this world, okay? Just you're switching on and off, and I think my colleagues here sometimes laugh at me. A lot of them are IT guys. So sometimes I'll be asking questions they think are very silly. They would expect me to understand, but I'm not an IT person, so come on. All right? But here's the thing. Zambia's government is planning to start taxing the popular online streaming service Netflix, arguing that the company generates revenue in the country but does not contribute to its national budget. All right. So, who is the president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, is now saying, Netflix, you need to be contributing to our national budget. I think that is what I'm making out of this statement, right? So the government also argues that Netflix does not abide by local content regulations that require television stations in the country to have up to 60% of local programs that promote the nation's culture. Come on now. I know I'm not a tech-savvy person, but I know enough to know that Netflix, when they were even having the programs, Africa was not even in the picture. They did not even have us in mind, the people who are building Netflix. It's just that now it has become an international thing that we're able to access. Even here in Kenya, I know a couple of people who have subscribed to Netflix. I think you pay some fee, a monthly fee, and then you're able to access the services there. So now the president, I don't know if it's just ignorance or what. I don't know. Does the government of Zambia have a right to claim a stake into Netflix, profits? They are saying that they should be contributing to the national's budget. And what makes me very tired is when they say that Netflix does not meet the requirement of 60% local programming. Like, are you serious? I don't know if I should just laugh or be sad. This is ridiculous. Oh my goodness. Like, Netflix is an American company whose main business is subscription-based streaming service, which offers online streaming of library of films and television programs. I think this is a problem when you have octogenarian politicians to be serving in your revenue or in your revenue collecting body as a minister for, say, information and technology. You put people there who don't even understand how this world works in the 21st century. Now, Zambia wants revenue from Netflix, a US-based company. They'll even start asking for revenue from what? YouTube and Facebook and what? Twitter? Come on now. I don't know. Perhaps I'm the one who does not even understand this whole thing. But please, is Zambia's government right in asking that, Netflix, now they want to tax Netflix? And I don't know what formula they will use in taxing Netflix. How will they even do this? People out there who understand money matters. How can the Zambian government, what modalities, what structures will the Zambian government use to tax Netflix users? Is it even doable? Is it something that the Zambian government can do, taxing Netflix users? That is the height of ridiculousness. It's even beyond funny. Sorry, so now we come back to Kenya, where for the first time children from Kenya's stateless Shona group will receive the government-issued certificates which will give them opportunity and rights long denied in the community. Shonas, they come from Zimbabwe, and it has been a community of them here in Kenya for... I grew up seeing these ladies because, like I said earlier, they have a distinct way in which they tie their head scarf, so you can know... So we didn't know exactly where they were coming from. So now apparently I'm learning that they are the Shona community from Zimbabwe, and they've been in this country since the 1960s, but owing to who they are, they've been denied, even their children have been denied things like birth certificates, because before you go get a birth certificate, you must go with the father's birth certificate and the mother's birth certificate, and since your father and mother do not have that, so these kids have been denied. So when it comes to even sitting for the national examinations, these kids have not been going to school, which now, as I talk and think about it, I think it's a great injustice. A child has been born in this country but has not been able to complete their school because they lack a birth certificate. I think that is a requirement that should be issued to any child born inside Kenya. It's not? I think it is. So these kids, you realize, I was just reading one of the stories of one of the women there who was very happy by this move by the Kenyan government, who said her child was forced, not even herself. She was very smart in school, but when it came to sitting for her final primary school education, we call it KCP, the Kenya Certificate of Primary School Education. If you pass, you go to high school. She was not able to do that because she did not have the required documents, and that is the birth certificate to register for this examination. So she ended up being a house help somewhere, which I very sad. So I don't know. So it's a good thing that the government is sorting this up. And these people are deemed to be stateless, as of course. And if you're stateless, you is a result of perhaps discrimination based on ethnicity, which I think that will amount to discrimination that they've been experiencing in Kenya, right? All right, also religion or gender and the transfer of territory between states or conflicting nationality laws. So those could be some of the grounds that a person would be rendered as stateless. So I'm just happy that finally, come on, like these people have been in this country. There's also another case of another community, I think, in the coastal town. I don't know which country they come from, but they're not originally from Kenya. So they've also been facing the same problem there. So, okay. It's a good thing that the government is sorting out. Let me read what you guys are saying here. Ashu Atem, you're saying if the dialogue was real, dictator Paul Biya, French Cameroon president, could have released out leaders Seseko Julius Ayuk Tabe and his members to participate in the dialogue. And I've said that here time and time again. This dialogue that, Cameroonian President Paul Biya called for. And by the way, he hailed it. Were you here when I was reading the news on Monday? President Paul Biya came out and said the dialogue that ended on Friday was the best thing that has happened in the country for a very long period of time. He's very happy with the outcome. And he knows now Cameroon will come together as one, and you guys will be together in that country, and you will move forward with that country, in that country. And secession is not one of the issues that was brought up during that national dialogue by Paul Biya. So Amazonians, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Because the major leaders who would have represented the Amazonians are not present in that national dialogue. So he was just having the national dialogue with who? All right. But it ended on Friday. But President Paul Biya said that was the best. You know the way President Trump says when he's being accused of asking for the favors he was asking from the Ukraine President Zelensky, and he comes out and said that was a very perfect phone call. So he's wondering why people are making a hula baloo out of it. You've seen that. It's also another ridiculous political developments there from the United States. And I think another whistleblower came out and confirmed the statements from the first whistleblower. So, all right, those are the problems there from the first world over there. So there is also a row. Abdi Samad, I don't know if you're still present here, but there's a row also now that is simmering between Somalia and Kenya, and Somalia has protested what it said is the violation of its airspace by Kenya after an aircraft flew from the Nairobi directly to Kismayo instead of first landing in the capital Mogadishu, and the Somalia Civil Aviation Authority filed the complaint against Kenya to the United Nations Agency International Civil Aviation Authority and Somali online platform Hiram said, quoting unnamed officials. And now on Saturday, a Kenyan registered Fokker 50 plane carrying politicians landed in Kismayo and the capital of Jubaland state without making a stopover in Mogadishu as required. So any plane coming from any other country, you cannot land, you cannot go to Jubaland or Somaliland or these other states without first going to Mogadishu. So that is the requirement by the Somali government. But this plane coming from Kenya seems to have contravened that law. So Somalia protested that and, of course, has written to the United Nations Agency of International Civil Aviation Authority. Okay, these problems of Kenya and Somalia needs to end already, man. We can't keep creating a problem where we're still dealing with another one. We keep creating more. It's not serving anybody, all right? So this came and went in and landed in Kismayo, and it had politicians. What I don't know, did it have politicians from Kenya or did it have politicians from Somaliland? That is the part that I don't understand. Okay, all right. So now we move to South Sudan and the United States ambassador to South Sudan. Were we not talking about this yesterday? I think we did, but here's the new development. The U.S. ambassador to South Sudan, Mr. Thomas Hushek, has come out and said that the United States stands ready to impose more sanctions if President Salva Kiir's administration does not implement the deal to end South Sudan's civil conflict. Remember, the deadline is on 12th November, right? So we have about roughly a month. Okay. So Hushek, speaking to reporters in Juba on Tuesday, urged South Sudan's leaders to focus on carrying out the September 2018 peace agreement and warned that the United States sanctions may be strengthened if that does not happen. Hushek seemed to, scoff at Kiir's recent statement in which he said a unity government will be formed by a November deadline with or without opposition leader Riek Machar. And, we've been talking about this. So now United States was not very happy with the sentiments that President Salva Kiir made when the country was marking 1 year after the peace deal that happened last year in September. Remember, South Sudan had until May this year to complete and implement this peace deal that would finally see the country having a unity government. That failed to happen, and so they were given another mandate from May to now. They were added another 6 months, which will be ending in November 12th. And of course, the two leaders, as I've been saying here, came out after the meeting they had last month, and they said they are committed to making sure they meet this deadline. But during the prayers last month, when the country was marking 1 year of the peace deal that happened last year, President Kiir said, you know what, he is committed to implementing the peace deal and he is committed to forming the government, but he will do it whether Mr. Machar is there or not, whether he's included or not, with or without Dr. Riek Machar. He will go ahead and do that. And now US has come out and said, you need to stop with that nonsense. All the players needs to be on the table. We need everybody that is involved, that was part of this peace deal, to be on the table before anything can even be decided on the unity government. So he's saying he has to make sure. And now they've come out here and they're threatening with new sanctions. And right now South Sudan needs all the money it can get and all the help it can get from across the world, especially the United States, which has been a key donor there, and other countries across the world. So when the United States comes out and makes up these statements, this is something South Sudan's, leadership must take very, very seriously. And now they are threatening with new sanctions. Should South Sudan, not meet this deadline in November, they're saying that sanctions will be strengthened. I mean, we do not want any more strengthening of sanctions in South Sudan, for goodness sakes. So I think these leaders should go and do the right thing for the sake of the country and the people of South Sudan, which is the bigger picture that these people don't see. And that is the part that sometimes really I don't get. When they're having these deals, when they're having these peace deals, when you look at the content, you don't even see anywhere that South Sudanese have been made a priority on this deal. All you see is this person will get this position, his people will get this, and then that. Well, there are other murky issues that really should be addressed before this unity government must be formed in South Sudan. The issues of how many states will the country have, that has been a matter of contention. The boundaries between the different communities that other communities are claiming that the community that is from the President Salva Kiir has encroached in others' community and with impunity, and that has not been addressed. These are the things that are causing the chaos and the disharmony between the different communities there in South Sudan. Nobody is seeking ways to address some of these things fast, that will make sure there's no acrimony between the South Sudanese people. And then what else is good for the people of South Sudan? I don't see that. I try to look through these agreements. I don't see that. And something else, accountability. The people who have died since the war broke out in 2013, I'm telling you, 400,000 plus and others unaccounted for have lost their lives. Like, when you stop and think about that, it's a whole county here in Kenya, depending on where that county is. These are people, these are human beings, not just some statistics out there. So there's not that will from the leadership of South Sudan. And if the US says, under that madman called Donald Trump, says they will strengthen the sanctions, they will strengthen the sanctions. And that is not something that we want for South Sudan. That is not something that South Sudan needs right now. For heaven's sakes, South Sudan is not even able to pay for the required fees for them to be in the East African community. I think we were talking about that right now. So the country is in very bad shape. So wherever they can get the money, they need it. And anything that will deny them that, I think that will aid in killing even the country more. But this leadership we have there, it's ridiculous. So Kir has been warned, you stop with that. You cannot have this unity government unless everybody is on the table. And by everybody, they mean unless Riek Machar is here and is seated across you, and perhaps Thomas Cirillo is seated on the other side, and Garang is seated on, not Garang, but Malong is seated on the other side, and you guys sit down together and talk, and other players, of course, that are stakeholders that are important in this peace deal. Then you cannot sit there and tell us how you want to form a unity government. If you even dare do that, these sanctions will come in raining, and that is not something the people of South Sudan need. So, yes, so there you go. Who maybe they thought it was a drone. You think so? And Michael Valentine, you're saying, tell African Union to let Biafra go before it's too late. Tabiso Shadrach, how are you? Thank you for joining. Good afternoon to you. It's an afternoon here in Kenya. I don't know where you're watching us. Joseph Otto, nice to see you. Saying South Sudan new law, can it come to pass? They're having a new government, the South Sudan new government. Can it come to pass? Like I said here yesterday, I think I'm cautiously optimistic, and this is why, judging from how the previous peace deals have been violated and did not even come to pass, I think we have to take some caution in that. But at the same time, I think the people of South Sudan must continue being optimistic that this thing will come to pass. But the new government is supposed to be formed, through the peace deal and the unity government after, the 12th of November, that is next month. I don't know if they'll be ready for that, but they came out and said they're ready to do that. They're ready to form the unity government, and they said, they will meet the deadline. So when you're out there, are you able to take their words? Are you able to take their words seriously? Are you able to bank on the words of South Sudanese leaders? You tell me. I'm just here drumming for support for people of South Sudan. The leadership there, it's exhausting. Okay, so now we move to Biafra. And the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has said the Igbo presidency will not end the ongoing Biafra agitation. Remember, yesterday here we were talking about it, and a member of a parliamentary leader there, I can't remember his name now. His name was Beke or something like that. He came out and said the reason why Biafrans want to secede is because the country has never had an Igbo for a president, and so he was saying that the solution for this problem, for the agitation of Biafra, is to have a president, for Nigeria to have an Igbo president come 2023 elections. And yesterday when we were having these conversations, Biafrans were not having any of this, and actually you quite annoyed with that statement from that leader. And you see that Nnamdi Kanu has come out and said this will not be the solution to the problem. He's saying that having an Igbo presidency will not end the ongoing Biafra agitation. And Kanu said this during his second broadcast at the month on Radio Biafra on Monday. He said this on Monday, actually. And he maintained that those clamoring for an Igbo presidency in 2023 were wasting their time. Now, the IPOB leader also further stated that the Igbo presidency is a dream, and it's like second Niger bridge and Ogoni cleanup, hence will not stop Biafra agitation. You remember the Ogoni cleanup that happened, Ogoni, that they come from the Delta state there, and I remember their leader, what was his name? Ken Sarowiwa, I remember. And so he was an environmental activist activist, as well as he was a leader in the River State of Nigeria. Remember, he was assassinated in 1995 by then dictator Mr. Sani Abacha, if I'm not very wrong. I read these things a long time ago, so I'm just trying to remember this history. So what was happening that time? The Ogoni people were people in the region of the southeastern senatorial district of the River State in Nigeria, and they now number about 2 million people, and they live in a very square line there in their homeland there, and they refer to as Ogoni land. And at some point they also wanted to secede, right? If I'm not wrong. And they share common oil-related environmental problems with the Ijao people of Niger Delta. So the Ogoni rose to international recognition and attention after a massive public protest campaign against shell oil there. Remember the spillage there. They've never even completed cleaning up that place, right? That led by the movement of the survival of the Ogoni people, which is also a member of the unprecedented nations and people's organizations there. And represented, right? So this Ken Saro-Wiwa was a leader. He was a writer, and he wrote a lot of poems, and he was also a television producer and also an environmental activist. And so he led the Ogoni people towards protesting. And the oil used to come from Ogoni land, and they never used to benefit. And the environmental degradation that came with that, with the carelessness, with the shell oil, were responsible there, affected a lot of Ogoni people there. So when you see Mr. Nnamdi Kanu making reference to this, it was a face in Nigeria that played a huge history in this person came out and was really very vocal in speaking on behalf of his people there in Ogoni land. And at the peak of this nonviolent campaign, he was tried by a special. What happened is he was arrested. First of all, before Ken Abacha came, before Sani Abacha came, there was another president who was also a military. I can't remember his name very well, but so he had wanted to work with Ken in his government, and he said he promised change, he promised democracy. But when Ken joined this government, he realized this president is not keeping his word, so he resigned from whatever position he was given. And in 1991, he resigned. That was in 1987 when he was given some position in the government. So he resigned later on, and then in 1991. He started this protesting. He was arrested and then released in 1993. And then in 1994, he was re-elected. This is after some, 5 or 6 chiefs from the Ogoni land that were allied to the government were found murdered. But at that time that these people were murdered, the chiefs were murdered, this guy had been banned from going to Ogoni land. He was not even present in that area when those murders took place. But they believed that his people did this, and so he was charged, him together with 8 others. I think they were known as the Ogoni, was it the Ogoni 9 or the Ogoni 10? So they were, finally in 1995, they were executed. Some execution squad were brought. That is all they should do to these, corruption thieves we have, especially here in Kenya. So I know murdering is wrong, but sometimes you just wish, is there a punitive way that corruption can be dealt with here in Kenya? I'm sorry, I'm even suggesting people to die, but come on. So now, some execution squad was brought in, and then Ken Saro-Wiwa, together with his counterparts, were executed. That was in 1995, and that went after various, even at the United Nations. I think there's one of his supporters that went there and tried to plead his case and said, can we try talking to Sani Abacha not to execute this person? But unfortunately, Sani Abacha was a very crazy dictator there, military dictator there, General Sani Abacha. He was executed, and his execution, of course, provoked international outrage, resulting to Nigeria being suspended from the Commonwealth of Nations for over 3 years. That is during Sani Abacha's rule. All right. So some bit of history. So now when you hear Mr. Nnamdi Kanu is coming out and saying, even that person coming out to suggest that an Igbo presidency in Nigeria in 2023 will perhaps stop the agitation for Biafra, he said that an Igbo presidency is a dream, and it's like the second Niger bridge and Ogoni cleanup. So that is what he's saying, because a lot of people from Ogoni land were really died during that time, and hence he will not stop Biafra agitation. So in other words, he's saying this will pose even a greater risk to the people of Biafra, so this will not be acceptable, and this will do nothing much really for the people of Biafra, even if they had an Igbo for a president. So this is a conversation we had yesterday. And now we see that Nnamdi Kanu has come out and rubbished these claims, but this leader who was saying that curing the agitation for Biafra by the people of Biafra land the problem that will be solved if an Igbo presidency is allowed in Nigeria. And from the political dynamics in Nigeria, I'm not quite, I know, but not too much. Perhaps you who are there, who are from there, or from Biafra land, or from the other Nigeria, you can, from Nigeria at large, you can tell me what from the political dynamics there in Nigeria, is an Igbo presidency even an option? Is it something that can really even happen there in Nigeria? Because judging from the political dynamics, is this something that can be possible there in Nigeria? If an Igbo president went there and stood and ran for presidency, could he be elected as the president of Nigeria? And if so, will this solve the problems? Will this bring the development that the Biafran people have been missing for a long period of time? Will this cure, the neglect that they have experienced from the governments that has come since Nigeria got its independence? Will this be a solution that will be accepted with the larger Nigeria and also people from Biafra land? Will this be the middle ground that finally will make sure that Nigeria coexists in peace, and both Biafrans and both the others are able to come together and be in one country, and the agitation of Biafra land will stop? You talk to me. Let me know what you think about it. I can see I've touched a nerve. So let me just read some of your response here. Yes, there were 10. How many? They were hanged to death on 10th November 1995. How many were they? Were they 9 or 10? Were they 9? The Goni 9 or the Goni 10? I can't remember. Or Goni 9 or Goni 10. I can't remember the exact number. It's been a while. I can't remember the exact details of that. Dominic Nand, you're saying evil, #evilcracy. Nigeria cannot give the Igbo a president. So evilcracy. So #evilcracy. So it is not democracy, it's evilcracy. Okay, Emeka Nweke, you're saying it is called the Ogoni 9 years, because there were 9 of them being hanged to death and their corpses, bodies poured with acid. Oh no, that is also what they did to Patrice Lumumba, isn't it? Remember the Belgians, Patrice Lumumba? And something here I wanted to read. Noah Chineke Madu, you're saying Africa can't be free unless Biafra is free. The European powers knows that Africa must support Biafra, and they use the money from Biafra land to develop the north and southwest Nigeria in a scam. When we start killing back Nigeria, the world will witness the kind of bloodshed. Come on, we don't want that to happen. I hope we just find a solution without, right? All right. So they were, and you're saying that they were hanged to death in November 1995. They were actually executed. And I hear before Ken died, I think 5 bullets went through his body, and then they were buried by the government under very tight security. You would think he was a threat to you would think he was Al Qaeda or something like that, and he was not. This is a person who was just fighting for the rights of his people, and he was murdered there very gruesomely. So how do you expect the people of Goni to feel that they're even part of Nigeria? Because at that time they were also calling for secession, and I think that did not sit very well with the dictator Sani Abacha then there. All right, Nwachineke Madu, you're saying Africans can't be free. Okay, I've read that. And who else? Eric Balebani, you're saying xenophobia must stop now. We need sober-minded Africans and so to unite and stop this barbaric xenophobia. Join the fastest growing movement in South Africa. Okay, there you go, Eric Balebani. If you want to join that, you can go search for him. So he's saying xenophobia has to stop. Yeah, they are going 9. All right, good. So I wasn't too far from that. So it was Ken Sarowiwa together with 8 others. And given the Igbo man, a president will not work because the North will choose or their slave who they can control in Igbo land. So we don't want president. All we want is Biafra. That is Michael Valentine and Michael KW. Is that how you say your name, Michael? You're saying, good morning, my sister. Only thing that can stop corruption in Africa is going China way by starting killing corrupt people. I know, right? But that will never happen here. Trust you me. Nick Chukwuezi, that is when we'll start looking at human life human life is sacred, which is true. But when Boko Haram is killing human lives there in Nigeria, the president is not even taking it seriously. Emeka Nweke, you're saying no, Miriam, they were hanged and not executed. Okay, no, Chineke Madu, you're saying to avoid third world war, let the world stop Biafra, exit now. Okay, and G. Best Olinia saying Nigeria is a zoo, so we Biafrans don't have anything to do with zoo president. That need is Biafra restoration. So there you go. So Nnamdi Kanu also has come out and rubbished these claims by this leader who was saying the reasons why Biafrans are agitating for secession is because they've never been given an opportunity to lead Nigeria. So in the 2023, he was proposing that for an Igbo presidency, and this will cure the agitation for Biafra and the secession agitations. And so Nnamdi Kanu, in his broadcast, the second he has had this month in Radio Biafra, he came out and said trying to get an Igbo to be the president of Nigeria in 2023 is a waste of time. This is according to his own words that he spoke then. And then he said that an Igbo presidency is a dream. It's like second Niger bridge and Ogoni cleanup. So I was just trying to understand. And when I was, relating this and what he perhaps was meaning with what happened to in Ogoni land. I remember in 1995, Mr. Ken, Sarah Wiwa was murdered by the government, and I'm told he was hanged, not executed. And so that is that. So he was saying, should this happen, then that will mean we are taking Biafra people to the slaughterhouse, and is not willing to do that. So thank you so much. Remember, this is Good Morning Africa. Oh, just a few minutes towards the top of the hour for me to just get out of here and go get me a cup of water or tea. I'm a teetotaler. So, but just a recap of what we'll be talking about today. We started with Uganda, where Uganda police have sealed off Bobi Wine's home in the capital, Kampala, hours after cancelling his music concert that was to coincide with the country's Independence Day celebrations. And as I said there earlier, I think Bobi Wine knew what he was doing and is looking for trouble, and so he got what he wanted, and that is the attention. And Ugandan police and administration does not understand. And so he's there. And now the world is feeling sorry for him over there. And so, okay, and also we looked at Malawi and developments in Malawi after the sham elections that happened in May this year. Of course, opposition has never recognized President Peter Mutharika as duly elected in the manner the elections happened. And remember, there was a case that was filed in the High Court there challenging those results. And then after, the manner in which they were dismissed, the opposition that led to some chaos, post-election chaos there in Malawi. So President Peter Mutharika wanted to go and have some campaigns. Why is he even campaigning? Why are they not just from election in May? So the president wanted to go campaign in opposition stronghold. Like, what are you doing? Those people already don't think that you are the president. You see, that is where wisdom should be applied. Still first, let people calm down and let the emotions, let them just first calm down before you can go there to campaign. And why are you campaigning? The country is just from elections in May. So the people there protested against President Peter Mutharika even wanting to show up there. That resulted to one police dying, and that happened yesterday. And in Nigeria, of course, we've talked about the ransom kidnapping now that is happening there in Nigeria, and has become a very lucrative, business there, a criminal enterprise there. And what is worrying is the eyewitnesses say the gunmen who did this kidnapping, where 9 people were kidnapped, are saying that these gunmen were dressed in military uniform and turned up in large numbers. And I was saying this cannot be the Nigerian military. This has to be the Boko Haram. And one of our viewers here said that the government takes the former militants in Boko Haram and absorbs them back to the reformed ones, absorbs them back to the Nigerian army, but instead they are the ones who are used to do the dirty work on Okay, that is what one of our viewers was saying, but I don't have a proof of that. But that is what one of our viewers was saying there. So there you go. And we talked about Egypt and how 200 protesters have been released. They were arrested following the protest that happened on 20th of September of this month. We looked at Sudan, and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates have given Sudan an aid package of 1.5 billion US dollars. And so they've been given 500 million US dollars cash, and 1 billion worth of petroleum products and food have also been sent to them. So UAE and Saudi Arabia have paid their debt that they promised immediately Omar al-Bashir was ousted. I don't see the person I was having this conversation here yesterday with. And I was trying to explain to you guys the events that led to, of course, Saudi Arabia has been very close to Sudan, and they've had a very close relationship, even with the former President Omar al-Bashir. But at some point, they felt Bashir was not really towing their line very well. So they actually funded even the protesters there. A lot of their money found their way there. They removed him, and they made sure the army officials are in their pocket. So they're working very well with them right now. I don't know what Mr. Hamdok's side is feeling about it, but aid is needed now in Sudan. And I was just wondering, what is the price tag of this aid that is being given to Sudan people? And I got some interesting feedback there from a host of our viewers. And we also looked at Rwanda, and now Rwanda has opened Africa's first smartphone manufacturing plant in the capital Kigali, in an event that was attended by President Kagame. And the phones will be called the Mara X and the Mara Z or Z, depending if you're British, you're using British or American English, and smartphones. And it will retail at a price of 190 US dollars, which is roughly around 19,000 Kenya shillings, which is quite affordable here. Yes, and of course, still in Rwanda, an American preacher was arrested on Monday, and now yesterday he was deported back to America. He used to own a radio station there, and he was a bit critical of the government. You don't do that, especially in Rwanda. So, the Second Amendment, that does not work in Rwanda. That is only the United States or even in a lot of African countries. So he was deported back yesterday back to the United States. So I want to see if there will be a reaction from the United States, right? I will look for some reaction over this story. And then tomorrow we can come here and talk about the double standards, right? I'd like to know how the United States reacted when one of their citizens was deported back to the US. And we look at the reaction by the United States. And we looked at Cameroon and the opposition leader who was released from jail on Saturday, Mr. Maurice Kamto, yesterday came out addressing supporters at his Yaoundé residence. Shortly after his release, he said that the battle is yet to begin. So he said he was put to jail, he was released, but he said he's not relenting. He will continue fighting the leadership of Mr. Paul Biya. I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of time before Mr. Kamto is back in jail again. Paul Biya, he will do that within a second if Mr. Kamto continues with this. So he said the battle is yet to start, and the fact that he was in jail Of course, he was jailed unlawfully, and he was released after the purported national dialogue that ended last Friday, and he was released on Saturday. He was pardoned by the president, him and a host of other people, and even some Anglophones who have been jailed arbitrarily were released on Saturday, and the rest were released, I think, on Monday as well. But the leaders of Anglophone are still languishing there in jail, and of course they're serving a life sentence that includes Ayuk Tabe and others. And we looked at Somalia and Kenya problem now, and apparently there's a plane that came from Kenya and went straight to Kismayo against Somali laws. Somali laws require if a plane is coming out of the country, it's first supposed to make its first stop in Mogadishu before it proceeds to the rest of the country. But this plane came straight from Kenya to Kismayo, and the government of Somalia was not very happy about it. So they wrote to the United Nations Agency, International Civil Aviation Authority, to protest this move by this plane from Kenya, because Kenya's plane violated the airspace of Somalia. All right. And then in South Sudan, we're just looking at, because we looked at this news, I'm just bringing you up to date in case for the viewers who are joining us today. What we also looked at earlier is that the United States ambassador to South Sudan, Mr. Thomas Hushek, is now saying that the United States stands ready to impose more sanctions if President Salva Kiir's administration does not implement the deal to end South Sudan's civil conflict. And of course, they were not very happy by what Salva Kiir said, that if Riek Machar does not return back to Juba in good time, he'll just go ahead and form the government anyway, with or without him. So United States have come out and said, you need to stop with this nonsense. That guy has to be there before that unity government is formed. And we looked at Biafra and the response of Nnamdi Kanu over that leader there in Nigeria came out and said that the reason why Biafrans are agitating for secession is because one of them has not been a president of Nigeria. So he had suggested that an Igbo presidency in 2023 should be made happen, and should that happen, then that will make Biafrans to stop wanting to secede from Nigeria. But Nnamdi Kanu has come out and said that will be a waste of time because the Biafra dream has to continue, and he likened that to what happened to the Ogoni cleanup. And we just talked about that and tried to understand what he meant by that. We also looked at Benin, and elections happened there in April, minus the opposition. The ruling party went to election all by itself. So now the government is trying to reach out and have a political dialogue with the opposition. Ridiculous, right? And also in Zambia, the government is planning to start taxing the popular online streaming service Netflix. I don't know how that is going to happen. And also we looked at Kenya, and now the Shona group, the Shona from Zimbabwe. We've been having the community here from the 1960s, and they've been looked at as stateless people, as they've not been able to get, even their children who are born in the country were denied the required documents, the birth certificate or other documents that allows you to move freely, to be to have jobs, to open a bank account, to attend school, to enter government buildings. They were denied that. So now Kenya has gone ahead and has acknowledged this, and is saying that this group of people will be given, this proper documentation, and they will stop being stateless, as now they are considered as stateless people. So that is a nutshell of what we've been looking at today. So I want to thank you so much, all our viewers. Emeka, you're saying the Ogoni cleanup means the inability of the Nigerian government to clean up the polluted oil environment of Ogoniland. Yes, that was caused by Shell Oil. And I think there was a case that the Ogoni community had gone, and there was a case like that. I don't know how that ended. So Abdi Samad Ad, you're saying Somali Parliament is voting today. All right. Please come back here, and especially tomorrow. I think we'll be having a show in the evening. I'm not sure. Tomorrow is a national holiday here in Kenya, and Somali has the right to protect its airspace. All right, sawa. So I want to thank you so much. Like Raila and Uhuru, one-time African country with two presidents. You think? So yeah, that's inauguration that Raila Odinga had. But instead of the government going for Raila, they went to other people. They could not go, because Raila is the one who was sworn in, who swore himself in, right? But the government did not go for him. Instead, it went for his surrogates, and some people suffered for it. But that's Kenya for you. That's Africa. That's Africa for you. So you're asking Igbo president, that will look like South Sudan war for leadership than freedom. Yeah. All right, so thank you so much. Okay, very well. So I'll see you here tomorrow for another edition of Good Morning Africa. Thank you so much for your company. Thank you so much for engaging with me and for making this show what it has been today. It has been lovely talking to you. Let's meet here tomorrow and advance our African narrative. Until then, my name is Miriam Ngutu. From me now is bye-bye.